Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Major update today on the future of Adrian Newey after Red Bull have lost 2 of the 3 races since Newey announced his departure back in Miami. Where is he going to go next in terms of teams? Ferrari seem to be the closest contender, and rumour has it he is going to make his decision in the next week or so. But there have been rumours over the last couple of days emerging that actually Mercedes have made a very compelling offer to the greatest designer in the history of Formula 1. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, plenty to say on the driver market today. So Ayaka Matsu, of course, team principal now over at Haas, effectively has implied that, yeah, Behrman's going to be there because asked the question on the rookies in the team. This is also the thing, the Formula 2 campaign is one thing, and it matters to a rather great extent, but the teams are kind of more concerned about how the drivers perform when they actually put them in their Formula 1 machinery. Of course, Behrman's outing back in Jeddah in the Ferrari was very impressive indeed, and he's done plenty of free practice sessions now with Haas over the last year or so, and Komatsu says, yeah, not all rookies are the same, Behrman has something more. So there's definitely an indication that Behrman will get the drive next year, and I feel like there's also a feeling up and down the grid of this kind of Behrman effect, where after what he did in Jeddah, in a very good car obviously to P7, but given the circumstances that he only came in on the Sunday, or the Saturday, whatever it was, because it was the Saturday night race I believe, only came in with 1 practice session, straight into qualifying, straight into the Grand Prix, he's probably going to get that drive. Ocon is apparently the other name in heavy consideration, so there is a very serious possibility of a Behrman-Ocon driver partnership next year at Haas, which is kind of out of left field if I'd have told you this, a few months ago, but now that seems like it's actually rather likely because Alpine have to consider the possibility of losing both drivers. Ocon and Gasly are both exploring their prospects, and I don't blame them really. Ocon is, if anything, going to get forced out. Sure, he is still racing in Montreal, they haven't dropped him after what happened in Monaco, but still, it definitely feels like that is on the way. The French Civil War will have to come to an end, and they may not even have a winner because Gasly may decide to leave as well. The team's in a bit of a shambles. We even saw just yesterday one of their top guys has been sacked, basically. I don't know if they've got any employees left, I'm not going to lie, Alpine. Everyone's left or got fired, so I don't really know what's next for them as a team, and if Ocon thinks actually Haas make more sense than that it does to say at Alpine, that's a pretty damning indictment of the team. Haas, of course, do allow the prospect of the Ferrari relationship because I think there are many drivers looking at, okay, if I were to join Haas now in, let's say, 3 years when presumably Hamilton might retire after 2027 or whatever, then that Ferrari seat might make sense given the Haas relationship. It's something at least that's possible because in the past it's typically been the Sauber team, Alfa Romeo as it was a couple of years ago with the Ferrari engine, that's where you'd go to then go to Ferrari, like Charles Leclerc for example, but maybe Haas is now the prospect there. Of course, Mick Schumacher, who was a Ferrari driver academy guy, he was a Haas for a couple of years before then that fell apart. So yeah, very interesting what's happening behind the scenes. And also Tsunoda, he is on that list as well as to potential candidates to join Haas, but the feeling is that he's pretty happy with VCARB, although he does say that he'll certainly think about whatever other offers arrive, and there will be other offers. And as we saw yesterday, VCARB, RB, whatever, they're saying, yeah, we'd love to keep Yuki, but it's not so clear we are going to be able to do so. Alex Albon as well says that he's confident in the Williams project. Obviously he must be, because otherwise he wouldn't have signed the extension, but there were potentially other offers for Albon out there. It did kind of calm down a bit for Alex just because we thought that he was going to go to Ferrari. It wasn't many months ago we were talking about that as a very realistic possibility, that given the Fred Vasseur relationship with Albon in the past, that Albon alongside Leclerc makes a lot of sense. And I genuinely think if the Hamilton thing didn't happen, I think they might have got Albon instead. They might have kept Sainz, but I think there's a very good chance they went for Albon anyway, given the Vasseur connection and maybe the feeling there in terms of what's actually better for the team in the longer term. But Albon says, look, he's stuck with Williams in part because they have the 2026 Mercedes engine. So yet again, there is a feeling that Merc are potentially going to be one step ahead in 2026. I guess the question is for Merc, is that going to be for them or is that going to be for McLaren, right? Because on paper, because Aston Martin in that year are going to be Honda powered, so it's going to be Williams, McLaren and Mercedes, the 3 Mercedes powered teams, which is actually going to be the stronger team in that year, because there is a feeling that they may be very competitive. And well, it's the similar reason why Albon's saying about Williams that potentially Norris felt that staying at McLaren and Piastri was a good idea as well. The feeling at Red Bull is that the deal is effectively done for Sergio Perez with the contract extension. Hasn't been confirmed yet, yet. The feeling is that it will be confirmed relatively shortly, although we're still hearing words from the team principal and from Helmut Marko that actually it's not so clear. Horner says that Perez has got to be consistent for Red Bull if he wants to fight for the championship, so effectively wants more from him, which is true. And the feeling at times is for Perez and for Red Bull that if you let Perez sign the extension, then all of a sudden he's going to drop off his performance. There's a constant debate on this, really. Is it better to keep the driver not under contract, keep them waiting, so then they'll deliver better results under the pressure of wanting to secure the new deal? Or does that actually backfire? Is the pressure a bad thing? Is it better for the driver to get the new contract and then they get a bit more settled and they can be, more relaxed in their racing? This is kind of like the Bottas effect, maybe in some respects, where some drivers perform well under the pressure of getting a new deal, and then some drivers, maybe like Bottas, once he'd got the new deal signed and it was sorted, then he was, could focus fully on the racing. So there's some debate on what's better or worse there. Perez maybe has been a driver that's done better under the pressure, but then you look at the last 2 rounds and you think, well, maybe that's not so clear either. If Red Bull's performance continues to somewhat plateau, there will be questions around Verstappen's future, as there have been for the last couple of months. Russell actually reiterated today that he'd be happy with anyone as his teammate at Mercedes. He says, yeah, got a pretty good teammate right now, so I don't mind who I'm against. Put me against Antonelli, put me against Verstappen. I'm gonna, do my best to get as many points and try and win the championship. Ferrari also thinking about a similar thing. And if this comes true, it's going to be really interesting for 2025, because there have been rumours that Ferrari are considering changing their suspension layout in order to what Red Bull effectively have. Now, when this year's Ferrari was unveiled, it was actually a big talking point that they'd maintained their pushrod front suspension design and a concept that Red Bull and certainly McLaren have not been going with now for quite some time. So there was questions with this year's Ferrari that maybe it wasn't aggressive enough. We saw that Mercedes had changed their rear suspension layout to be the same as what it is for Red Bull to try and, replicate some of that success. And there was a feeling that the suspension that Adrian Newey designed in 2022 was a key reason as to why Red Bull are able to dominate the last several seasons. So the fact that McLaren didn't change their suspension design felt like they were probably leaving some performance on the table, and they were happy to accept a car that they could understand better and then work from there. And it obviously has worked out rather well, but the feeling is that there is still some performance advantage from the way that Red Bull currently do it, and now McLaren have also adopted. So there are rumours that they may consider developing in that direction. Sources have suggested designers have understood some key aspects that would deliver gains for the 2025 car that may make a big difference in a potential title fight. Now, they of course don't want to do any resources or use any resources they might not require, just because 2026 is so important that 2025 is going to be a straight up development of this year's car, like an evolution, of course, rather than a revolution. But apparently Ferrari could also be poised to switch to pull rod front suspension concepts, with the idea getting ahead of the game on the aspect, considering it's likely going to make the switch in 2026. So that is very interesting to hear, that McLaren and obviously now Ferrari are potentially realizing the way that Red Bull have done it is superior, and a pull rod front suspension is advantageous aerodynamically, certainly when it comes down to the floor and the way that it deals with the airflow going into the Venturi tunnels. It seems to have some aerodynamic advantage, that suspension setup. So Ferrari may be considering doing exactly that, and obviously it comes at the same time where they are trying to lure Adrian Newey to the team, at least we believe, who was instrumental in a very similar design for Red Bull. So there may well be something in that. Ferrari also the only team to have a pull rod rear suspension, which of course Haas take as well, because that is the Ferrari part that they take. Actually the only team to still use a pull rod rear suspension, but Ferrari are adamant that there's no real benefit to switching that. But I seem to understand that there may be benefits in switching from a push rod to a pull rod front suspension concept. And if they were to do so for next year, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Just because that's a relatively significant change to happen going into a season where they're probably not going to make crazy developments because the focus is going to be on 2026. But maybe this is something that they may know. Newey will want to run a pull rod front suspension for 2026. So let's just do that. So let's just make the transition for 25, and then of course it's going to work in the medium to longer term as well. Saw some comments there at the end of the article from Enrico Cardile, who is their top guy basically from the technical side at Ferrari. There's rumours that Aston Martin want to sign him, right? Because obviously they're struggling lately, Aston Martin. The drop off in performance of their car from the start of last year to where they are now is absolutely dramatic. And the feeling is that, yeah, they're trying to sign Cardile onto their team. Whether that's going to be successful. We've heard the talk as well from the likes of Fred Vasseur over the last few days, basically saying what's important now is stability, and in the same way that Ferrari were looking at Pierre Wache, looking at Enrico Balbo, Ben Walthouse, maybe those guys over at Red Bull, the top technical guys outside of Newey, and they were unsuccessful in acquiring any of those guys. Red Bull basically said, all right guys, re-sign the deal, let's move onwards, and I imagine that Car Deal may do a similar thing over there at Ferrari. But speaking of what they may do elsewhere, we've got to talk Adrian Newey and where his future actually lies. Günther Steiner has been giving plenty of comments in the media lately and basically said that Williams are thinking wishful thinking when it comes to trying to sign Newey and Sainz. Now, Sainz is like a genuine possibility though. Like, I don't think it's worth overlooking the possibility that if Sainz doesn't go to Red Bull, which it doesn't look like it's going to happen, if he doesn't go to Mercedes, which it doesn't look like it's going to happen, then where else, right? There's Audi and there's Williams. And there are compelling arguments, I would argue, both ways. So that's fascinating. The Newey stuff is a little bit more ambitious, I would say, because Williams, realistically, as nice as it would be for Newey, from like a nostalgia perspective, trying to help that team get back to podiums or to the top or whatever, realistically, they do not have the resources to execute what I'm sure Newey wants to achieve in the next 5 years, because I think Newey has said he'll work for 4 or 5 more years, and he initially said, I might retire, and then he was like, well, I might do another stint of 4 to 5 more years. If that was at Williams, do they have the resource over that 5-year time frame to win the championships in that period? Highly, highly unlikely. So that, to me, does feel like wishful thinking, but the Carlos Sainz thing is not out of the realms of possibility. Steiner also says they could look stupid over these pursuits, but, I guess you got to try at the end of the day. And this is when the question comes around as to where Newey is actually going to go, because he was spotted the other day signing some Ferrari caps. We'll see that again. I think a Ferrari flag, wasn't it? We'll see that again here in a second. There were rumours that Ferrari are no longer interested in Newey. Now, I speculated the other day this may just be classic contract push-pull, where they negotiate and then they come to a sword and then they kind of go again, because to me, Ferrari makes the most sense for Newey. He can probably work remotely to some degree, doesn't have to be at Maranello all the time at all. He even works remotely sometimes from South Africa when he worked for Red Bull, which, made a fair bit of sense to him. He can work in a super consultant role, inspiring some of the changes for 2026, but not necessarily being their hands-on all the time. Whether, though, he can integrate properly into the Ferrari setup, that obviously is working well, is another question. But the prospect, surely, for Fred Vasseur to get himself, obviously Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Adrian Newey, is surely too good to just pass up as a prospect. But there are questions as to, he's going to make his decision very shortly, where's it going to be? We're pretty sure that he had an offer from Ferrari, or there were even rumours that in Monaco the deal was signed, or that he met with Fred Vasseur back in Britain a couple of weeks ago to potentially get the final deal done. But interesting sources saying that may no longer happen, and therefore the Aston Martin talk, and therefore the Mercedes talk, becomes rather possible. So this was a rumour as of yesterday that Mercedes had made an offer to Adrian Newey, and including shares in the team. Now this again is quite fascinating, right? Because the Lewis Hamilton departure from Mercedes was pull factors from Ferrari, but was certainly push factors from Mercedes. He wanted a 2+1 at Mercedes. He wanted some sort of ambassadorial relationship. They basically said no. And unlucky Lewis, we'll give you a 1+1 because we want to ensure that we have room for Kimi Antonelli in the future. Lewis said, okay, sound, 1+1, and I will terminate it myself before the second year and go to Ferrari instead. So this is when the discussion comes around that apparently Mercedes were offering Max Verstappen, oh yeah, come along, we'll give you all the money you want, we'll give you the ambassadorial role, everything you require, and we'll give you shares in the team or whatever it takes, right? And now apparently they're offering a similar thing to Newey. So there's definitely been talk about the way that the Hamilton situation was treated from Mercedes' side, and now maybe they're realising, hang on a second, in order to actually acquire the people and maybe even retain the people we want, they have to go somewhat further. So they're potentially offering Newey shares in the team, but I don't really know if the monetary side massively motivates Newey anymore. Whether he's making 25 million a year or 100 million or all the shares, does it really matter to a guy like Newey with his boat and his yacht and he wants to sell around the world? Probably not. So I think what's more important is, where does he feel he can make a difference? How good is the team going to perform over the next couple of seasons? Can he win championships in that particular team? Can he design cars for drivers that he wants to design cars for? Ferrari ticks all of those boxes really, and the rumour is that, yeah, he's going to make this call in the very near future. So apparently next week, this coming week, is when he is going to make the decision and potentially sign the contract. I did wonder whether he would wait around just until the next generation of aero regulations have been seen, because the regulations are still being decided. The engine regulations we know, but the technical regulations on the aerodynamic side, we don't even know what they look like yet. Some sources are saying that in Monaco, this deal was effectively done, that he's going to arrive in Maranello in red and he's going to join Ferrari, and that still seems like by far the most likely option, even more so than retirement, I think. I just don't see that as an especially likely situation, but there are of course now reports that Mercedes have given him a big deal that includes shares in the team, but, you know, Ferrari did everything under the sun to get Lewis Hamilton. I think if they really want Newey, then they will find a way to make that work. And there were also rumours a few weeks ago now that Newey isn't especially keen on Toto Wolff as a team principal. He doesn't maybe think he's that good, or doesn't think that the direction that Mercedes are heading in. There were also rumours that Newey effectively thinks Mercedes are going to struggle substantially to return back to where they want to be. Then again though, they do have what could be the most promising 2026 engine project. They have the prospect of still getting Max Verstappen to that team as well over the next couple of years. That's certainly Toto Wolff's plan. They've got James Zallas, another great technical mind. You know, there's definitely prospects there for Mercedes if they were to make a compelling enough offer. And the last couple of races have maybe shown that Mercedes aren't on this absolutely irreparable downward slide. They have in Imola and now in Monaco made some progress. So they're still not where they need to be. They're still not where McLaren or Ferrari are with respect to Red Bull, but they're maybe not free-falling as it seemed like they were a few weeks ago. They seem to have some understanding now of their car, although I guess time will tell whether that changes Newey's mind on any of this. So look, Newey signed a Ferrari flag back in Monaco. The teams and the drivers, you know, they do this type of stuff. Maybe it doesn't. It probably doesn't mean that much, but certainly it means something, right? That Newey was at least willing to do so. He entertained it. The fans were telling him, oh, you know, you got to join Ferrari, Mr. Adrian, and you know, he was smiling at them and making it all rather the jovial. So, in tweeting your thoughts in the comments below. Rumour is Newey's going to make his decision next week. Contract signing will happen shortly after that. Ferrari surely remains the most likely prospect, but there are other possibilities out there as it presently stands. Just on Mercedes as well, I guess, because they have to realise, Mercedes, certainly with the loss of Hamilton, that things are not moving in the right direction. Hamilton clearly saw the team on the downhill slide. He saw Ferrari on the upward trajectory, and it seems like Hamilton's made a very wise choice yet again based on the evidence of the last few months. Of course, though, for Mercedes, if they want to be a serious contender again, they've got to take this as a wake-up call, right? When Hamilton leaves, it shows beyond any doubt the team isn't as good as it should be, effectively, and not where it needs to be to win championships. So Hamilton's gone. Russell said that this is going to effectively ignite a new spark at Mercedes. Changes often ignites a new spark for everyone. It's good that Lewis is leaving us now rather than in 21 when it would have been difficult for the whole team given the circumstances. So his feeling is maybe this is going to inspire some change and some development and some progress, and maybe part of that is signing Newey, right? I mean, that would be the ultimate statement. Hamilton leaves, you sign Newey, you try and use Newey as not exactly bait, but you know what I mean, you try and use him to get Verstappen onto the team, because if Newey were to join Mercedes and they were to be able to get that deal done, if Ferrari are no longer interested or whatever, and Aston Martin, we believe that Newey doesn't really want to work for Lawrence Stroll because the environment in the team is probably not what he really wants, and also that team is arguably, you know, regressing faster and further than Mercedes have in the last 12 months or so. If Merck were to get the Newey deal done, if he was to accept the offer and Ferrari were no longer interested, that would tell Verstappen, you know what, they almost certainly are going to have a competitive aero package. They quite possibly are going to have the best engine package. So that makes it a rather compelling statement. But very much intrigued to your thoughts, as always, in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.